I don't know, disappointing is the word, but understandable. Saying that Viggo Mortensen, who played Aragorn in Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson's trilogy, questions what source material Amazon is using for the Rings of Power. Let's see what he said. So he was asked about the Rings of Power in an interview with the Hollywood Reporter while promoting his latest film, Crimes of the Future. When first asked about the show and if he planned on watching it, Mortensen replied, "What is that? The TV thing? Is that with Apple or something?" He doesn't even know. He doesn't even know who's doing the show. So clearly he doesn't really care what's going to happen. And now that makes sense because he was never really into Lord of the Rings before he filmed it. If you remember back in the trilogy, when you looked watching the appendices, he talks about how he got the call up for Lord of the Rings and he didn't really know about it or care about it, but his son loved it and his son had already read it and everything. And his son was really encouraging him to go and work on Lord of the Rings, the film trilogy, because he was such a fan of it. So then he read the books because his kid loved it. And then he's like, all right, this is cool. I'll go play the character. So it stands to reason that he wouldn't really care or know too much about what is going on with this show because as an actor who didn't really care about it before, he just read what he needed to work in that role in the movie. And if you remember, they asked him to come back for The Hobbit. And he told him, "Is Aragorn in The Hobbit?" "No." "Well, thank you very much. I'm not coming." But here, if he actually looked into it based on the previous statement I just made about The Hobbit, I think he would be against it because this Alex Rittman guy has no idea how to explain this. Alex Rittman would inform Mortensen the show is being made by Amazon and is thought to be the most expensive TV series ever made. And then he said, "Oh, right, yeah, I'll watch that. That's all we've got, most expensive." And then he said, "But do you know what source material they're using? What they're allowed to use?" He's asking, as a fan who wants to watch the most expensive show ever, what source material did they use? Which is what we're all asking and we've all been asking. And now, this guy from the Hollywood Reporter doesn't even know. Rittman would indicate he didn't know what source material they were adapting, but did inform Mortensen the show is taking place thousands of years before Lord of the Rings and that Isildur is one of the main characters. Yeah, the Isildur, who we have no idea about because it's earlier Isildur, who has a sister in this apparently, who's going to take over the reins, which never fucking happened. And then he replied, "Oh, that's cool. Yeah, it'll be fun to see." However, how many videos have I already done and streams have I done showing all the lore that they are breaking and destroying to make this show? And they even said, the showrunners even said that they're trying to create the novel that Tolkien never wrote. If Alex Rittman told Viggo Mortensen, the showrunners said they want to create the novel that Tolkien never wrote using source material that never existed, would he be as interested then? I would like to see. While the Hollywood Reporter's Alex Rittman didn't know the source material they're adapting, which is hardly any, because they've only got the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, which has the appendices, which is basically an outline and timeline of everything that happened in the First and Second Age, not really detailed, which is like the Silmarillion, Unfinished Tales, History of Middle-earth, all that. Payne explained, "We have the rights solely to the Fellowship, Two Towers, Return of the King, appendices, and the Hobbit. That's it. We do not have the rights to the Silmarillion, Unfinished Tales, History of Middle-earth, or any of the other books," which I just said, which details those timelines, which they are using for their show to make stories that never happened. Galadriel, War Galadriel, Commander of the Armies of the North, never happened. She meets a guy who a character on her travels over to Middle-earth, never happened. Even fan films are better than this. Yeah, there's a few fan films where Aragorn has to go find Gollum just before Rings happens. And it's cool. So Amazon does not actually have the Silmarillion, Unfinished Tales, or History of Middle-earth that extensively cover the Second Age, the period of Middle-earth Amazon show will take place in. It's exactly what I've said. They said despite not having these rights, McKay believes it won't be a problem. Really? Because this is everything we've talked about before. Now, if you told Viggo Mortensen this in the interview, I would be very interested to see what he had to say. There's a version of everything we need for the Second Age in the books we have the rights to. No, there's not. There's a tiny bit, and you've just taken that and extrapolated your own stories from that. As long as we're painting within those lines and not egregiously contradicting something we don't have the rights to, which you already proven you have multiple times in multiple videos, there's a lot of leeway and room to dramatize and tell some of the best stories that Tolkien ever came up with. The first trailer contradicts these statements as Galadriel is now commander of the armies of the North, which never happened. Viggo Mortensen, I would like to see what he actually has to say when you explain all this stuff to him, that they're actually destroying every part of the lore that they're taking to use for the show. That's be like, hey, Viggo, you're going to play Aragorn, but we're going to make him something that never existed, or we're going to completely change him for the show we're doing. Peter Jackson didn't do that. Like, you listen to all the appendices and what they said about them making the trilogy. I'm not talking about The Hobbit, we're talking about Lord of the Rings. They said, we're trying to keep it as close as we can as possible to the story and the feeling. Even if we have to change a few pieces of it, we're trying to keep it as close to the essence of Tolkien in the story we're telling. This one, no, this is not what's happening.